Well, it is becoming more apparent that the Olympics are hoping to reach younger audiences as interest really declines in global sporting competitions. But is it a little too late? Well, Brock University Assistant Professor of Sports Management Taylor McKee joined us live this morning to talk more about this. Taylor, it is interesting to kind of watch the evolution of the Olympics. We're all sitting here cheering on, Team Canada right now, and we're watching sports like, big air snowboarding, ski cross, some of these really intense, almost action sport level events that, are really new to the sort of modern Olympic Games. Do you think, are you suggesting the Olympics needs to just eliminate some sports or just diversify even further what's being offered each, event?
I think the IOC right now is trying to answer that question for themselves. I think there's sort of flirtations with new events. There's events that have sort of appeared and have disappeared in the case of, say, breakdancing.
Yeah.
But the empirical facts are they're struggling to attract new viewers in general. But for instance, in the United States, they're looking at a primetime number that's down 73% from 2018 to Beijing. Now, that might be a Beijing-specific demographic. We'll find out soon enough. But in the United States, as an example, here in North America as well, and this is true not to such a degree in Canada, but the numbers are the numbers, and they are struggling to attract young people. Perhaps that's an event issue. Perhaps that's the Olympics as a whole, as a brand, is suffering among young people.
Could any of this, Taylor, be potentially connected to social media? I mean, social media, there's a different dynamic when it comes to sort of the highlights, the snapshots, perceptions, and angles. The other thing I've noticed here, too, for example, is the drone footage that we're seeing in some of the coverage right now has really helped enhance the sort of viewer experience here. And social media can bring people closer as well. Do you see that as being potentially part of it?
Certainly, and to that exact question, I mean, it's not just the IOC that's dealing with this in the Olympics. I mean, I can watch a wonderful Ja Morant reverse windmill dunk highlight on Twitter. I don't need to watch the Memphis Grizzlies play on a Tuesday night. And they're not the only sport that's struggling with this issue of condensing their sport into highlights. I mean, the drone footage is unbelievable, again, but are we going to see young people sitting there to watch, 2.5 hours of big air? I mean, that's a real question. I mean, does this sort of essentially lessen the value of the product itself as a television product, or is the Olympics is the future of it, this sort of tiny clips that we're going to see condensed onto social media in the future?
Now, I know, of course, you're talking about sort of attracting young people, and the IOC has made some, taken some steps, the Youth Olympic Games, to try to sort of encourage a little bit of that. Is that going to be enough, or do you see a sort of wider effort necessary? Because obviously the younger audience is the future audience.
Certainly. And the Youth Olympic Games is a brand that is in an enormous amount of jeopardy, I would think, right now. I mean, that requires a ton of money. It requires viable bid cities, and it does not have any real resonance in the wider sporting world. You could see that in the next 20 years or so, really under threat, I would think. Or perhaps they go an entirely different route with the way those games are executed. But certainly, I mean, again, the brand itself is what I'm curious about among young people right now. Does it mean something to young people at the Olympics? Certainly, young people are really interested in the hockey competitions right now. But the idea of Canadian sporting icons being born at the Olympic Games, in and outside of these sports that have professional ties, that's something that I wonder, even over the past 20 years, is that still something that's even possible in the sort of wider Canadian sporting landscape?
Yeah, that is interesting, because you're right. I mean, people are going to watch Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby kind of regardless of, what jerseys they're wearing. It's more exciting and more patriotic, certainly at the Olympics or, Four Nations face-off kind of thing. The flip side that I look at here, too, and I think you're hinting at this, Taylor, my son is a big into the action sports, scootering in particular. And that side of it, everyone talks about the X Games. They don't talk about the Olympics necessarily. They talk about the X Games, and you're kind of seeing some of the X gamifications, if you were, when it comes to the Olympics. How much of an influence do you think that has on where the Olympics may go?
Right. And the X Games, when they were sort of founded, were initially kind of disregarded by the IOC. And then there was a large amount of panic that sort of echoed through the halls of the IOC in the early 2000s and said, okay, well, we're losing major ground here to the sort of Tony Hawk and Bob Burnquist revolution in the Summer Games. Now, in the Winter Games, we definitely see a much more full-throated endorsement of X Games style events. The question is, again, is this going to move the needle in terms of the value of the advertisements that they're selling? Is this going to really change the way that people view these events themselves? The X Games are cool, and they remain to be cool. Less so maybe than they were 20 years ago, but they are cool. The Olympics, are they cool? This is like an exoteric sort of question, because these things shift dramatically. The other problem the IOC has right now in terms of these notion of these extreme sports is the notion of, can we generate celebrity based on the Olympics themselves, or do they come into the games as celebrities? Do they leave with larger cultural resonance? Does your son learn new athletes at the Olympics, or does he essentially just come in with the athletes that he knows and then maybe not see them on the screen and then move on?
Yeah.
This is a huge issue, because it used to be the athletes were made at the Olympic Games. Their brands were developed there rather than either excluded for or essentially anonymous to the Olympic process itself.
Yeah, it really is an interesting sort of sign of the times and state of affairs in sport and sort of globally these days. Listen, Brock University Assistant Professor of Sport Management, Taylor McKee, always appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us and talking about this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care.